Art of the Elements, Episode 2, Carbon. Today we are looking at one of the most important elements, an element of life itself, carbon. Carbon has many allotropes. That means it has many different forms that are all still elemental carbon. The one that you come into contact with most often, unless you happen to be a jeweler or a billionaire, is probably graphite. Graphite is used in pencils, which is why I'm not using the paint today. The structure of graphite is made up of layers of carbon hexagons. The bonds in each hexagon and each layer are very strong, but the bonds between the layers are relatively weak. So when you use a pencil, you're actually separating these layers, leaving some of the graphite on your pencil and some of it on the paper. Because of this use, graphite is actually derived from the Greek word meaning to write. Carbon is capable of making 4 bonds, but it only makes 3 bonds in graphite. This means that there is a spare electron between the layers that can flow freely throughout the whole lump of graphite, making it a good electrical conductor. Carbon in the form of graphite and graphene are the only non-metal conductors. The other well-known form of carbon is of course diamond. Diamond uses all 4 possible bonds and makes large networks of strong bonds, which is why diamonds are so tough. One of the most interesting things about carbon is that the 2 common forms are very different. Synthetic diamond is one of the hardest materials known, whereas graphite is very soft. Graphite conducts electricity and insulates heat, whereas diamond insulates electricity but conducts heat. And they also look very different. Diamonds are clear and shiny, whereas graphite's fairly dull and opaque. I'm afraid to tell you girls, Shirley Bassey was wrong. Diamonds aren't forever. Graphite is the more stable form of carbon, but you don't have to worry just yet. It does take literally millions of years for diamonds to become graphite, so don't go throwing them out yet, unless you want to give them to me. There are also some more obscure allotropes of carbon too. There's graphene, which is actually a single sheet of graphite. It's a good electrical conductor and is thought to be one of the strongest materials ever known. And you can even make it at home. Simply take a pencil and put some sticky tape on the top of it. If you rip the sticky tape off, you might well have graphene. Unfortunately, unless you have really high-end electrical equipment, you won't actually be able to tell. It isn't really a viable business, but graphene was first found this way in some Russian labs. Graphene is actually an area that they're doing a lot of research in just now, and the Nobel Prize in Physics back in 2010 was actually awarded to 2 scientists at the University of Manchester for the experiments they were doing with graphene. There are also other smaller structures, for example carbon nanotubes, which are made up of a single sheet of graphene wrapped around itself to form a tube. And there are also a set of allotropes known as fullerenes, one of which, Buckminster fullerene, has 60 carbon atoms and forms the same shape as the old footballs, with carbon pentagons and hexagons forming to make a sphere. Carbon is also all around us in compounds. All known life on Earth is carbon-based, and it is, by weight, the most common element in you. There are also over 10 million carbon compounds known and described, which is only a tiny fraction of all those that are actually theoretically possible. It is also found in most of the fuel we use, be either gas, oil or coal. The word carbon actually comes from the Latin word carbo, meaning coal. These fossil fuels generate most of the world's energy, and it's why we need to be mindful of our carbon footprint. That's all for episode 2. If you're enjoying the series, why not subscribe and look back on the first episode if you haven't watched it already. I'm going to be uploading every Thursday and Sunday for the foreseeable future until I've covered all 114 named elements.